have in front of me here a 13-inch chimney bracket along with a lashing kit, and this kit together will be capable of wrapping around the chimney to hold this bracket into position, and from there we'll be able to mount, we'll say for instance, a 1.8 metre pole to hold a UHF aerial for picking up, for instance, the Sailview channels. Okay, so let's just go through the different component parts that make it up, and I'll give a quick overview of how it would be correctly installed here, although we have a full demonstration video as a later part of our series. So the first thing here is to look at the installation kit. So the first thing here I want to discuss is we have these brackets here, corner brackets, okay? What will happen with these is there's 3 of them in total. What we do is we'd stick them on a corner like this, and the idea of them is to have these 2 little guides here, and they're to guide this guide wire which will wrap around the chimney coming from the bracket and then terminating with the bracket here. And their purposes are twofold. First of all, you want to prevent damage to the chimney by the wire actually cutting into the chimney, and then the second thing you want to make sure is that if we tighten the guide wire and have it good and tense, that it will remain tight, simply because there'll be no give whatsoever in these metal plates. Now the next thing here is it'll be used in conjunction with this guide wire here, which is sufficient to wrap around all standard chimneys, okay? And next we'll move on to these J-bolts. Now the J-bolts are interesting because on one end of it what we do is we take the guide wire and we wrap it around repeatedly, okay, and tie it off. And on the other end what we do is we actually, if we look at this bracket actually secured in position, this is the bracket that would actually hold the pole. We'll actually terminate it here by pushing it through here, tighten the J-bolt on and tighten it in, and we'll repeat the same process over on the far side. So what we have is a guide wire going around, terminated on both ends and cut roughly to the right length, so it tightens in here, and subsequently then we'll tighten it in tight and it'll lock this bracket into position. Now next what we'll do is we'll come and we'll discuss the topic of these this actual U-bolts. So what the U-bolts will come along is, and we'll actually slot these in. Once again, we of course take off the nuts, slot them through from the far side, and we do the same on the top and also the bottom. And at that point, we're able to actually drop a pole into position and tighten it and lock it on and put the UHF aerial on top, okay? So hopefully that'll give you a reasonable overview of it. So the next question is there an alternative bracket to this one? Well, this is ideal if we have a very heavy pole, or you know, a high weight on it, because it gives a lot of grip on the chimney as well, and also there's quite a large step off, and that's a distance from the actual chimney out to where the pole is. So we have a large reveal on top of the chimney. This type of bracket is ideal. Now in other cases what we might have is, and a more popular bracket on the website is, we'd have something like this a 9-inch bracket here, which doesn't have the same amount of grip in the chimney, and it doesn't step out quite as far, but it's just a simpler and lower cost bracket, and in most cases this is more than sufficient, particularly for mounting something like a small UHF aerial, but it's exactly the same process in terms of the lashing kit. It's simply wrap around, and this is available as a separate product with the lashing kit on the tvtrade.ie website. Now the final thing here is just to cover the topic of what installation tools we'll be using in conjunction with this. So let's look at the different things. The first thing is we'd use snips, and simply use a sharp set of snips like that to actually cut this guide wire to exactly the length that we require, okay? The next thing then is to come along and to use this 15mm socket that we have here, and you use that in conjunction with the J-bolts for tightening them in, and a 13mm socket here, which will be used in conjunction with these U-bolts here, and the final thing is a ratchet like this. So that's a reasonably comprehensive overview of the 13-inch chimney bracket and lashing kit that's available on tvtrade.ie.